Now I do.
Welcome in, fools.
Take two!
It's episode 33 of the Fantasy Fools Football Podcast. And it is great to be here and talk about some NFL. We just got through week 2, and now we're looking forward to it's already week 3 in the NFL, which is time's flying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So excited. So excited. Honestly, we're getting some good highlights already over here. I think it's actually been a great week of football.
Yeah, it was definitely a week of football that had a lot of surprises. And I just want to rub it in live on the air that I called the upset of the week. The Raiders beat the Ravens, and I called it. Yeah. Go back to episode 32 if you don't believe me.
That was a good call. I didn't think that was going to happen. I mean, I'm getting nervous about these Baltimore Ravens, man. These Baltimore Ravens are not looking anywhere near as good as I thought they were going to be.
So only 11% of teams that are 0-2 make the playoffs. And I believe one of those teams was actually the Bengals team that made the Super Bowl. No?
I'm not worried about Joe Burrow at all in the Bengals. I really am not. Them being 0-2. I heard a stat today that Joe Burrow, in his first 2 weeks of every single season, he's a combined record of 1-9. 1-9, Joe Burrow.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. Almost as crazy as your camera not working.
I know. It's so annoying. Camera. Yeah. And now I can't change it, of course. You can turn off.
We really didn't want to look at you anyway. It's fine.
I can't even turn it back on.
Well, luckily,
ridiculous.
Luckily, you don't have.
Let's move on.
You're not
to
showing everything, so we can just go to the news. Exactly.
Miscellaneous news around the NFL. First and foremost, we got Kareem Hunt signing with the Chiefs, signed to the practice squad. Who knows? I mean, it's running back. He's familiar with that team. He could slip in as soon as this weekend. Next, we have Tua, who came out and said he will play again, despite all the talk of how people are saying he should retire. Then we have Skylar Thompson, who is preparing to start for the Dolphins, which we'll get into later on where that's going to fall. And because they also signed Tyler Huntley off the Baltimore Ravens practice squad, which I actually saw coming, and I'm a big fan of his. Next, we got Bryce Young, who is being sat for, of all people, Andy Dalton. And they did come out and say, we have no intention of trading Bryce Young. Then Seattle signed practice squad RB and wide receiver. And Jordan Love is practicing again. So there's a small chance he plays against the Titans. Would be a little bit of a surprise, but there's a rumor that he even potentially was going to play this past weekend. So he might be back quicker than expected.
Yeah, I don't know. I did find it shocking that he was practicing already. I mean, an MCL sprain already, then he's already practicing. He's back on his feet. I mean, good for him. I hope it's good. It's great for the Packers. I mean, they can't really keep going on with their backup, but overall, it could actually be really good for them if it honestly saves everybody on the Green Bay receiver core.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tua needs to retire.
He probably should, in my opinion. But guess what? I'm not Tua. I'm not the one who signed a $200+ million contract. And I'm also not the one thinking for my head.
I'll say this. If he didn't take away last year, if this happened last year, I think he retires. But he had a career year last year, and he feels so good about that I don't think he's ready to walk away.
It blows my mind if he does not walk away. I mean, this is his fourth.
YOLO.
Isn't this his fourth?
His
series?
Third confirmed.
Third
confirmed concussion. Yeah, there's some clips going around the internet that basically there was a fourth one that was never confirmed, but overall he's been through the ringer. So I really got to say I'm nervous for Tua. I think it's going to end up being one of those big heartfelt stories, but I don't think he's going to honestly be playing next year. I think he's going to sit it out for most of the season on IR. Maybe he comes back, but I do think there's going to be a really tough intervention for next year. But I do think that's a good segue into our injuries category. And just like we're talking about leading it off, it is Tua. He did get a concussion. He's on IR right now. He's at least missing 4 weeks. He's seeing some specialists about his head condition. So we'll see and we hope for the best. Outside of him, other relevant running backs here, we're starting out with Isaiah Pacheco. This one's a clincher for everybody, right? Broke his fibula. He's on IR. He's estimated out 6 to 8 weeks. Joe Mixon, he went down in the Sunday Night Football game. He had an ankle injury. He's week to week, though. He's practicing already, so we'll be seeing him in the coming weeks. I don't expect him to go to IR. Tajay Spears is day to day. This is not necessarily a huge issue. Hey, we do expect him back in the short term, but in the long term, maybe this is just opening more of a window up for Tony Pollard, who is looking great. Tank Bigsby Tank Bigsby was hurt in the shoulder. He's basically kind of keep going through his rehab, but in the end, this is not going to really affect ETN all that much. I expect him to just keep carrying it forward. Marshawn Lloyd hit IR today with his 17th injury of the season, it seems like. So he is not going to be available for 4 weeks. Then going on to some wide receivers, the big couple devastating ones were Cooper Kupp and A.J. Brown. Cooper Kupp injured his ankle, and he's out indefinitely. No timeline for him. A.J. Brown has a hamstring injury. He's week to week, along with Debo with a calf injury. We probably won't see much production out of them for the next 2-3 weeks, I'd say. Justin Jefferson with a thigh injury, but he is already practicing, and he expects to play again next week. Then finally wrapping it up with a couple tight ends. Evan Engram with a hamstring injury and Taysom Hill with a chest injury. Both of them left the game, but we'll have to monitor their conditions as they move forward.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how many injuries are happening already, and just how the crippling effect it's having on these teams. And I know we're going to talk about the Rams later, but I think about the Rams a lot with Puka Nacua out, with Cooper Kupp injured, Tyler Higbee's out still. It's going to be interesting to see how they continue.
I agree. I think it's actually the Rams were the ones hit the hardest. I really do believe that. They're not even all just skill positions, right? The offensive line is a mess now too, because I think they had a couple of their starters go out, which is now just putting Stafford at risk.
Yeah, and it's a little worrisome. I mean, we do injuries week to week. I think it just once again reinforces how important the waiver wire is. The people who stay on top of the injuries and adjust because it happens so often are the people who make playoffs at the end of the year.
Totally right. I mean, oftentimes you'll end up having people who are getting the waiver wire pickup of a Kyler Williams or a Puka Nacua last year. Basically, they rode them to championships. So you're right.
Right.
I just think the struggle is obviously no one knows who those guys are. And it's going to take this coming week with all these guys on injury, maybe for them to step up. So it's going to be, I think week 4's going into week 4, that waiver wire is going to be a big one as you're seeing these explosions happen.
It's also like paying attention to things, if Tajay Spears doesn't play, you make sure you're playing Tony Pollard. Like if, A.J. Brown isn't playing, you're making sure you definitely start Devonta Smith. Like paying attention to those things and capitalizing on your player's situation helps.
Yep. So that was our news and injuries, sponsored by no one. Going into the weekly trifecta, and this is where we go through our surprise of the week, consistent of the week, and our fool of the week. And I'm going to kick it off, guys, this week. And it's interesting because I think my surprise could also be considered a consistent, but that is Ramondre Stevenson. The Patriots really are showing a definite prowess in the running back room. I also was thinking about putting Antonio Gibson, who did have a pretty decent day as that secondary back. But Ramondre Stevenson, he continues to be a fantasy asset. For the capital you spent for him, you definitely got that value. This past game, he had 21 attempts, 81 rushing yards, plus a rushing touchdown. He did have 5 targets, but only 2 receptions. But still, he is showing that he can be a third down back.
I love Ramondre Stevenson. I'm actually really kicking myself that I traded him to my goddamn brother. Traded him to my brother just for a sympathy pick, and he's just killing it out there. So I agree. I love it. My surprise of the week, though, it's not somebody who I can say is a surprise that he's on this list, that he really popped off. Devon Achane. I thought he was super quick, super fast, super electric, and honestly, super not hurt. Was anyone else expecting him to be like maybe limped in or maybe getting a little bit of a limited backfield? No, he was in all game long.
Yeah,
and he turned that into 100 and he turned that into over 160 yards from scrimmage on 7 receptions and 22 carries and a touchdown. Exploded against me.
He is another one where you question marks going into the draft, and I actually drafted him in 3 of my leagues, so I'm super happy, especially now with the injury to Tua. This is going to be a Devon Achane show until, as we are afraid of, he might get injured. But he did not look hurt after coming off of that injury he had after week 1.
He looks electric. He looks like he's going to be the next, person to join that elite RB group, the Derrick Henrys, the Saquon Barkley's, CMCs. My surprise of the week was Daniel Jones, and I went with that because when else am I going to get to put him there as a Giants fan?
They won a game. Oh, no, they didn't.
Yeah, he was sixth, fifth in some, depending on your scoring and everything. But yeah, he had an awesome week, had no turnovers, and there's a chance that if you put him in at Superflex, or even if you were hurt at quarterback and put him in, he won you your week. He always does play well against Washington for some reason. So he's playing them again.
Not really some reason.
He plays them twice a year. So honestly, he's my surprise this week. I don't think it's a sign of things to come, but I might start him when he plays Washington again.
That's a solid play.
They're also, interesting enough, the Giants are also going against Cleveland Browns, who have a notoriously great defense. And it's interesting, you look at the sacks from Washington and and from the Minnesota game, he was sacked 5 times versus Minnesota and did awful. Against Washington, he had 1. So it's not as you're 100% right.
Yeah, he was 5-1, or he's 5-2 now in his career against Washington. He just, for some reason, just tears him up.
Going into my consistent of the week, and it's got to be my guy, Alvin Kamara. He is one of the surprising guys for me because he's so old. I definitely drafted him with some hesitation, but he is absolutely killing it. He had 20 attempts for 115 rushing yards. That's a number in and of itself. That is 5.75 yards per carry. He also got you 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 targets, and 2 receptions for 65 yards and a touchdown. I mean, this guy won you your week this past week if you have him in your lineup.
I know. I definitely know because you were playing him against me. So to see 44 points, in fact, not even that, to have Devon Achane and Alvin Kamara both against me and they were on your lineup, I think you beat me with your running backs alone. It was rather sad for me. But onto my consistent. I don't know if you can be more consistent than this wide receiver right here. Justin Jefferson is QB proof. I will sit here and say I made a mistake passing him up in our draft, thinking that Sam Darnold is going to hold him back because he is QB proof. 4 for 7. He had 7 targets, 4 receptions, 133 yards, and a touchdown. Still looks dominant, even with Sam Darnold throwing him the ball.
Good choice. On mine, I have James Conner, who I was iffy about going into the season, especially with them drafting Trey Benson. But so far, he's proven me wrong. He's putting up top 5 weeks, and he's done it both weeks. He looks awesome. If you got him, definitely keep playing him regardless who they're going up against. Tyler, who's the fool of the week?
Tyler, want to take us to the fool?
Yeah, my fool of the week is Christian Kirk. Honestly, at this point, I think it's just the Jaguars themselves. It is awful. This guy, he had 3 targets for 1 reception for a negative yard. He almost got you negative points this week. And he was on the field 88% of snaps. That's what blows my mind is he was on the field for 88% of the snaps. And then you look at the other side of the field, Brian Thomas Jr. did not do much better. He had 4 targets, 2 receptions, 494 yards, give him credit. But I'm worried about Trevor Lawrence and the effect he's having on his offensive team. He had worse. Wait for this. Maybe Trevor Lawrence should have been my fool. Trevor Lawrence had a under 50% completion rate.
Oh,
Sub
geez,
50%.
did he? I didn't see that.
14 completions with 30 attempts.
That's not great.
And Kirk got one of them.
That is awful.
If you're a
that is
franchise
awful.
quarterback getting paid $250 million, you have to be throwing at least 60.
Yeah.
And that's not like an average. That's like what you should be throwing as your floor.
And I'm pretty sure he's one of those 3 people who are tied for highest paid before Dak's contract. I'm sorry. Before Dak's contract. And so that's just brutal.
I just want to make one comparison before we move on, because I know we have to. But if you do the math and you look at a guy like Gardner Minshew, who just went up against the Ravens, he had a completion rating of 79%. And he is a discounted quarterback. Just the level of incompetence from, I feel like, this Jaguars franchise right now, it is starting to get scary.
Yeah, the Jaguars are definitely they're building a reputation about losing, and that is the worst thing to have in a locker room. But let's move on. So to my fool of the week, I actually have multiple fools. It's pretty much an entire class of quarterbacks. I'm talking rookie quarterbacks, and this is why people are so nervous about getting rookie quarterbacks in their fantasy leagues. Let's go through the top 6. That's the great draft that we just had, right? 3 of them haven't played yet, and Drake May, JJ McCarthy because of injury, and Michael Penix Jr., right? And now we're going to go into the other 3 that have started for their teams, each one. You're talking about the generational Caleb Williams. You're talking about Jaden Daniels, and you're talking about Bo Nix. Jaden Daniels had a great rushing week in week 1, but overall kind of fell a little bit shy on week 2. Still put up rushing numbers, but still fell a little bit shy on week 2. However, on top of that, of all 6 of them, 3 of them being starters, not one of them has thrown one passing touchdown yet. Not one through week 2. So this is scary, and this is exactly kind of why you don't really want to trust rookie quarterbacks, I think, going forward. And I just have them kind of linked with Bryce Young, who also, as we already talked about, lost his job in year 2.
I still think that you can start a guy like Jaden Daniels. He is number 6 right now quarterback, so he's one of the rookie quarterbacks you can start. But I would not start Caleb Williams. I would not start Bo Nix. Obviously, JJ McCarthy is out. But I would still start Jaden Daniels.
Jaden's the only one I would start.
Would 100%. You start Jade? Okay, taking away Cooper Kupp's injury right now, would you start him over Matthew Stafford?
Yes.
Jaden Daniels, yeah.
Okay. Yep. Didn't expect that quick of an answer. Okay.
Moving on to my fool of the week, I have DJ Moore. He put up a career year last year. He's, I was hoping for better things. He's clearly the number 1 targeted there. He's getting a bunch of the target share, and he's playing a lot of snaps. It's not resulting into the fantasy points you would hope for, but I do think he will not be in this category for long.
Talk about a guy who looked frustrated at his quarterback, though. Man, did you see that look
when
I
can tell you had
Caleb
Williams
missed him? Oh, yeah, he's not happy with his situation right now.
Nope. And it's crazy because he had so many targets. I feel like 2 guys that, for me, are very similar in your wide receiving core that you're expecting more of are guys like him and Amari Cooper, both of who aren't performing the way you would have drafted them. But so that was our weekly trifecta for week 2 results. Now we are going to dive in to our week 3 matchups, starting out with Thursday Night Football. I don't know what to expect. We've got the New York Jets versus the New England Patriots. It could be a good game. This is a rivalry in this division. But from a fantasy perspective, you're starting Bryce Hall, you're starting Garrett Wilson, you're starting Ramondre Stevenson, definitely. I think Hunter Henry is now a confident start on this New England Patriots team with Jacoby Brissett behind the helm. But you are, I think, if you're on a deeper league, you can consider flexing Adam Lazard. Did not have a great week 2, but you could see him bounce back as he did in week 1. And also, I think Aaron Rodgers now, again, in those deeper leagues, and someone, as we're starting to see people get injured and your waiver wire pickups and buys coming through, I think Aaron Rodgers is a guy you're going to want to look for. I think he's a start. And, going forward, they've got a pretty good schedule to face up against. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a flex for this game.
I do think Aaron Rodgers could be a flex. I'm not as high on Hunter Henry as you are. I do understand he had 12 targets and over 100 yards last week, but guess what? The week before he only had 3 targets and 18 yards. So I do think he's a boomer bust candidate, and he's done that throughout his entire career. But I do like the rest of your picks.
The thing I look at, though, for Henry is his snap percentage. He was in 83% of snaps the first game against Cincinnati, 84% of snaps the second game versus Seattle. So now, again, they're going up against a tough New York Jets defense. So, but he's number 5 on the tight end right now.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I would start him for sure. In terms of Rodgers, I agree with your analysis there. And I would not, if you have Rodgers, I would look elsewhere if you're in a 1 quarterback league. If you have a super flex available, he could be a really good option. But we are talking about defense that held Joe Burrow to 8.3 fantasy points in week 1. So it's not exactly an exciting matchup for Rodgers, but yeah, he could be a good super flex.
Agreed. So let's move on to the second game of the week. This is we're getting New York out of the way early, I see. Okay, so we got New York Giants versus Cleveland. We got New York Giants versus the Cleveland Browns. What do you say here? I mean, as far as starts go, Neighbors has popped. Neighbors has emerged, and he is the superstar that we all thought. So that's great. We got Jerome Ford, who's going to be your starter, and David Njoku, if he's healthy, he's a possibility, but I have him in my flex category right there. Along with, on the Cleveland Browns side, all in my flex, I have Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and Deshaun Watson. I think I'm higher on Deshaun Watson than the two of you, but I still think that he has rushing upside. He's had 5 rushes in both of the previous games. On the New York Giants side, other flex plays who you could definitely throw in there are Devin Singletary, and we do have Daniel Jones in there as well, just knowing that it could be a pop week. But again, against the Cleveland Browns defense, might be tougher.
Yeah, I'm not going into this matchup with confidence in the Giants because Myles Garrett is going to sack Daniel Jones more than the Minnesota Vikings, and you see how Daniel Jones does when the offensive line doesn't hold. I think this is a game where I would even consider Neighbors as a flex candidate. I know you said he popped off, but that was against the Commanders, who allow huge amounts. Their defense is nothing. So I'm not as optimistic, and I definitely don't think Daniel Jones is a flex, but we'll agree to disagree on that one.
The only other candidate I think who's worthy of mentioning is, again, we saw Wan'Dale Robinson get a lot of targets in the New York Giants offense. He's not terribly relevant unless you're in a PPR, but if you got it, I would pick him up in PPR. Moving on to the next matchup, we have Philadelphia versus New Orleans. So, obviously, you're starting Hurts. He's a top 5 quarterback. Barkley, same deal. He had one little drop last week, but that doesn't affect his fantasy value moving forward. And Smith is a must start this week with A.J. Brown out. Also, I think Goddard, he probably hasn't performed the way you would have liked to, but somebody's going to have to step up in the receiving game with A.J. Brown out. It can't all be Devonta Smith, and I don't think it's going to be Jahan Dotson. It's probably going to be Goddard. On the other side, you've got Derek Carr, who's cooking, number 2 quarterback on the season. Kamara, number 1 running back on the season. They're a winning team. You want players on winning teams. Definitely start both of them. Olave, I think, Philadelphia's weak point on defense is their cornerbacks. So, with that being said, I would start both Olave and Shaheed.
I think Olave and Shaheed, for me, they're now migrating to this flex category. Olave has not done what you ever have wanted him to do. He is still a disappointing player. He had 6 targets, 4 receptions. Yeah, he had 81 yards, but man, you continue to get disappointed for him. So I think he's now shifting to that flex category. And Shaheed, look, if you're in a deep league and need someone, go for it. But he only had 5 targets last game. He had 5 targets the first game, 4 targets against the Cowboys. And I think he's a flex. Definitely would worry going into it.
Normally, I'm with you 100%. In most weeks, I would agree with you. Philly's weak point on defense, though, is their cornerback. That's why I think both of them are a strong flex play. I think they're putting up wide receiver 2 numbers this week.
I like what you're saying. I hear what you're saying with the defense, but I don't like the number of attempts that Derek Carr's throwing here. I wouldn't actually have him as my starter. For me, he's only thrown the ball 23 times and 16 times in his two different games. So that's a combined total of 39 attempts that he even threw. That's less than most people have put up in 1 week already. So he's not throwing the ball that much, which means he's not going to be even getting many PPR points. And Shaheed has been efficient as all hell, but he's not going to keep doing that. I mean, like, as much as I would love to, he's not going to keep doing that. I would have Derek Carr personally as a flex, maybe ride it high, or actually I would trade him high right now if I could.
I like that point. Trade him high. That is exactly what I would do. He's on number 2 right now, and I think you could probably get a pretty penny for him. So he's definitely a guy that I think you could look to make those trades for. Moving on to the Houston Texans versus Minnesota Vikings game. From the Houston side, you are definitely starting C.J. Stroud,
Everyone.
Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson from the Minnesota Vikings side. I think, in my opinion, I think Diggs and Dell are both flex options. We are seeing a majority of the targets go to Collins and Diggs and Dell. Dell's going to be good as in that Shaheed role where he gets those bombs, and Diggs is going to be that goal line wide receiver who's going to get those touchdowns. So it's hard to not start him, and I think you can every time. From the Minnesota side, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that Sam Darnold is coming into the picture as a flex quarterback option. If you have a quarterback who's out like a Jordan Love, or if you got drafted Bo Nix high, Sam Darnold's starting to be that guy. You might be able to pick him up.
I think it's a possibility.
I'm even higher than him on that, honestly. He's top 10 right now in quarterback total season points, and who knows? This could be a consistent thing for him. Not only is he's doing this with Addison being banged up, so once Addison's back, Hawkinson's not even there. I think once he has, a fully healthy supporting cast, we could see Darnold be top 10 this season.
Yeah, I still hold so many reservations. I mean, it's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks. We've seen 2 week bursts with people before.
Let me
Derek Carr
remind you,
being one of
Daniel
them.
Jones has once upon a time had a top 10 fantasy season.
That is true, and we all basically told you at the time. We all told you at the time it's not going to last, and guess what? You decide to breathe in the hype train, but whatever.
And before we go to the next matchup, Mike, I do want to say Darnold also just beat the 49ers, who do have a stellar defense. So
yes,
that's why I'm putting some value there. And another guy, again, I'm going to let you move on in a second to the next matchup, but another guy I think you should start looking to pick up, and with caution, Cam Akers. Joe Mixon got hurt. Cam Akers is efficient. And with Dameon Pierce out, I think Cam Akers is a sneaky waiver wire pickup for when Mixon inevitably goes down. Akers was efficient, 4.57 yards per carry. Yes, he did have the fumble, but he's a guy I'd stash if you have the room.
No, I agree with that. I think Akers is he's looked good in the preseason. I think he actually has a lot of opportunity at this point, and I think he's shown enough in the first games that he's played that he actually might relieve a little bit of that work off of Joe Mixon. So I agree with that. And just one other point I wanted to say, I was very high on Tank Dell going into the season. I really am a little upset to see he's not getting the targets thrown his way. I do think that it's not something to panic over, and they will come. Okay, so moving on to the next game, we have Denver versus Tampa Bay. Honestly, this is everyone I want to start from the Denver side. Okay, we're done. Then we're going to go to Tampa Bay Bucks. I love Baker. White in this lineup. If White is healthy to play, I would love to play him. But I mean, you got to watch out. He was a little banged up. Mike Evans is obviously a steal, and Chris Godwin has really emerged back into his old self. So
yeah,
honestly, you're playing all four of them. As for flex options, this is where I guess I do have a couple Denver guys. I personally think Sutton could draw a lot of attention, so he might get a lot of targets, and he's questionable. Javonte Williams, he's your running back. You're going to probably need somebody on your as your running back 2. You might be able to fit that.
Last point on this game. Did you guys see Baker had some odd quote about how he loves playing with Mike Evans? He's like, yeah, I still throw it to
Yeah.
double coverage and Mike Evans. It's basically like a cheat code.
I
Still
saw that. I saw that.
I just want
to like a cheat code.
Mike Evans getting it in double coverage. I was like, what the hell?
I just want to say really quick before we go to the next matchup, Baker Mayfield is the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football right now, and he's number 2 overall.
Damn. Yeah. Who's number 1 overall right now?
Kamara.
Is
it? It's got to be Kamara. It's got to be Kamara. He's probably number 1 overall. He's probably number 1 overall.
He looks awesome. Yeah. So, moving on to the next matchup, we have Green Bay versus Tennessee. On the Green Bay side, you're starting Jacobs. I'm probably starting Reed because he's basically Wisconsin Debo. He's not. I don't know if I'd put him in as wide receiver 2, but I might consider him in the flex because he's too good to not get involved. Matt LaFleur will find a way. And then on the Tennessee side, I'm definitely not starting Will Levis, but I would consider starting Pollard, especially if Tajee Spears doesn't play. And then you have Calvin Ridley, who, he's with Will Levis playing poorly, he's pretty much solidly in the flex.
I think, honestly, Mike, you go first, then I'll share.
So I am a little nervous about Jaden Reed. He does have a questionable designation next to him right now with a calf injury. They do tend to linger a little bit. So, and he only got 2 targets and two touches really last game. So I am a little worried. And he fumbled the ball. So he might not be in as good standing. So I think I'm sticking with Josh Jacobs being the workhorse back. And outside of that, Tony Pollard has looked exceptional, like you said. And Calvin Ridley honestly looks also exceptional.
I'll agree with you. And I think, to put in perspective, who are you starting this week? Jalen Reed? Or are you going to put in a guy like Shaheed?
Shaheed.
I would put Shaheed.
Right.
Just because that's what they're going for right now.
Yeah.
And that's my point.
A healthy Jordan Love, Jaden Reed all day. But
with the quarterback power now, I would definitely go. Yeah. I would avoid Green Bay wide receivers if you can, because they're so hit or miss.
So let me ask you this though. Okay, just going into a future game here. What about him versus Michael Pittman? Reed versus Michael Pittman.
Right now,
I think I would go
Jordan
Reed.
Love?
Right now.
Right now.
Michael Pittman Jr.
Yeah. Speaking of, we're going to go into the Chicago versus Colts game. So the Bears versus the Colts. From the Chicago side,
Bears.
I don't want to start, honestly, anyone. Keenan Allen, haven't seen what you want. Even DJ Moore, haven't. I mean, you're going to probably, DJ Moore is going to be your flex candidate, but you haven't seen anything. From the Indy side, you've got, I think you're still playing Anthony Richardson based off where you draft him, even going up against this tough Bears matchup. Michael Pittman Jr., I still think he's a start, whether he's in your flex or wide receiver. I think he is a start. And Jonathan Taylor continues to cook. From the what I would look to do is I would bench all Chicago's running backs. I don't trust them. None of them are efficient. And from the Indy side, with Josh Downs coming back off of injury, I would not play Josh Downs or Alex Pierce anymore because they're going to have more room, especially now it's going to be a battle between Downs, Pierce, and Adonai Mitchell. So I would not start anyone but Pittman in that case.
That's fair assessment.
I would agree. I think this is a tough game. I do think that Alec Pierce has a role in this offense because apparently Anthony Richardson just likes to throw it deep randomly. But I will say that this is not going to be the game because Anthony Richardson is not going to be. He's going to just run the ball, honestly, all game.
Yep. Mike.
So, moving on, we have the LA Chargers versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Honestly, in this side, I loved starting J.K. Dobbins. I think J.K. Dobbins has looked absolutely fantastic. On the other side of the ball, you can play Fields and you can play Najee Harris. They both have been dominating the reps. Fields is projected to be the starter again. They're 2-0. So, guess what? Mike Tomlin's going to ride the hot hand. As far as some flex plays, Herbert is a possibility. I would probably stay away from it, but he is a possibility, as well as Ladd McConkey and QJ. No, I just don't agree with QJ. But
I don't.
I think Ty.
I do. Look, he had 5 or 6 targets, 5 receptions, 2 touchdowns. I think he's a guy you can look for. And I think he's a flex in the deeper leagues. Honestly, here's a perspective. For me, QJ or Jalen Reed, I would put QJ in.
I would not. No way, because he did that. Sure, he had 6 touches or targets, 5 touches, but he had under 10 yards per touch, right? Or under 10 yards per target. 2 touchdowns made his value go up against the Carolina offense or defense.
That's
He's
true.
playing Carolina. Like, you're not going to be playing Carolina. You're playing Pitt. They're going to have a great defense, and he literally can't catch the ball if it's not catching it with his chest. It's just not going to happen. I would never touch him.
He's very curious to me. He's someone that I'm looking at as in this is kind of his second chance. Last year, he did not perform the way he should have or was expected to. And I'm kind of like, okay, are things going to click now? Is he someone who's going to be on the radar moving forward? Or was this a one-off, like Mike said, because it's the Panthers defense?
His next 2 games are against Pittsburgh and Kansas City. I don't like that.
He might be a sneaky waiver wire pick now. Because if he has another game like this, he's going to be at the top of everybody's waiver wire list. Get him now if you think he's good.
And then drop him next week.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the big deal? You're not using your bench players anyway. So moving on to the next match, we have Miami versus Seattle. On the Miami side, we already talked about how awesome he looks so far this season. We have Achane. You're starting him. Regardless of Mostert coming back. If Mostert comes back, he's... in my opinion, has flex value. And wide receivers, I still think you're starting Tyreek Hill because he's Tyreek Hill. And, they're still going to find ways to get slant passes to him, screen passes to him, and possibly even have him run it. In terms of Waddle, he's the one I'm a little more iffy on him starting. Now, Seattle side of things, I think you're starting Geno because he's playing well. Charbonnet and Walker, you're probably starting both. They both bring at least flex value. And Metcalf had an awesome, really long touchdown last week. So maybe that's a sign of things to come, him really clicking with Geno. And you're possibly starting JSN, but I'm probably not starting Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, I think for me, you're starting either Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet, whichever. If Walker's back, you're starting him. If he's not, you're starting Charbonnet because the Seattle team loves to have a primary back, and both of those guys perform when they are the primary back. From the from the Miami side, though, Jordan, I disagree. I think, yes, you drafted Hill for where he's going to be. You're going to put him on your starting lineup, but you don't like it. And that's because Skylar Thompson's throwing the ball. And
but you don't have a better option.
Right.
Exactly. I don't actually think Hill's going to be affected by this injury as much as everybody thinks. I think Waddle will.
Yeah. Another sneaky guy that you might want to pick up as a bench tight end is Jonnu Smith. The guy continues to come out of the woodwork and have these games. He was number 6 tight end last week, and I think he's a guy that you could look for and pick up. And I've actually picked him up in a few leagues, and I might start him over the crappy tight ends that I have. So definitely got to look up. But moving on to the Carolina Panthers versus Las Vegas Raiders, this game is going to be a blowout, in my opinion. Carolina, now that you have Andy Dalton, I still think that Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen might be some guys you're going to look and possibly flex. You might be starting out. You could consider Andy Dalton if you're going through injuries on your QBs, but that's really the only guys I'm looking at. On the Vegas side, I think you're going to start Gardner Minshew, man. He is going to pick this team apart. And it's definitely a guy that you're going to want to look towards starting, especially with Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers. The question I have, you can consider the Las Vegas Raiders defense with Andy Dalton going against them. You might want to be mindful. Who are you starting though? Zamir White or Alexander Mattison? If you had to start one.
If you had to start one, I'm starting Zamir White. He is the projected starter right now, and he's the guy who I think they really want to see what they got. So that way it's going to be their future. And if he can't do it against Carolina, then they're going to know their answer.
I agree with Mike's assessment there. I think Zamir's going to be the guy by the end of the season. Alexander Madison's going to have his weird one-off games like he did when he was with Minnesota, but he's not going to be the go-to guy.
I don't think either of them are starts.
I think neither of them are starts, but I think it's going to be very interesting. This is going to be a very telltale game for the backfield. We good with this game?
Mm-hmm. We're good.
Okay.
Minshew Mania, baby.
I will say it's going to be exciting to see how much he throws. I mean, honestly, I'm thinking, what do you think the line is for Devontae Adams? Like plus or minus 25 targets?
It's got to be.
All right, so moving on to San Francisco, LA. This was a game I would have been so excited for if there wasn't all the injuries for LA. So on the LA side of the ball, honestly, I could really only think of one person I'm feel confident starting, and I don't even like it anymore because it's just devastated. Kyren Williams is your only start with Cooper Kupp, Nakua out. Stafford is going to be under duress the whole time. It's going to be tough. But on the other San Francisco side of the ball, you're starting, I'm telling you, everybody. Talking Purdy, Ayuk, Mason for running back, Kittle, the 49ers defense. I think you start everyone on this team. And as far as flex options go, when they start having to throw the ball, you can go to the Jordan Whittington. He had a lot of hype in the offseason. You got Demaryius Robinson. I really don't like anyone else, guys. What do you think?
Nope. Yeah, I'm not starting anyone besides Kyren, and I'm starting everyone on San Francisco.
And honestly, you're starting Kyren because you have to, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to.
I agree.
Who else is going to get handed the ball?
It's going to be a Kyren show, even when they're
the
behind.
San Francisco 49ers.
Nah, but who knows? Kyren could have a decent week because he's really their only offensive weapon. We'll see. I mean, yeah, I'm starting him. This
devastates me as an owner of him, though, because I think he's going to get injured this game.
I know. I was going to say he might be the next one to get injured because everyone's getting injured.
It's him or Stafford, either way.
Yeah. Moving on to Stafford's going to once he goes down, Stafford's going to get traded to Miami, and then the Rams will be royally fucked. Moving on to the next game, we got Detroit Lions versus Arizona Cardinals. On the Detroit side of things, you're starting Goff, you're starting Amon-Ra, you're starting Gibbs, you're starting Monty. You're definitely also starting Jameson Williams, who finally is clicking. You know who you're not starting is Detroit's defense. But on the Arizona side, why you're not starting the Detroit defense is because Kyler and Marvin Harrison Jr. are really clicking. So is Trey McBride. All three of those are must starts. James Conner, also, he's been top 5 the first 2 weeks. He's also a must start in my book. I'm not starting either defenses, though.
Yeah, the thing with James Conner, though, is the Lions do have a great run defense, and we saw that last week against the Bucs where Rachaad White couldn't do anything. But I'm with you on the Lions side. I think you're starting everyone. I mean, Jameson Williams, he's finally clicking. 11 targets last game against the Bucs. 9 versus the Rams. Something's finally happening with him, which is great.
I do have one question before we move on to the next game here. So who do you feel better starting this game? Sam Laporta or Jameson Williams?
Jameson Williams.
I'm just looking at this. Amon-Ra had 19 targets against the Bucs.
Yeah, he did. See, so I want to say this. I actually feel better with Laporta because I think this is going to be the game where basically Jameson Williams had his emergence. People are all talking the hype now, and no one's talking about Sam Laporta. I think he's going to be flown under the radar, and this is going to be the game to kind of Dan Campbell's going to throw in and say, nope, we still got this guy too.
I could see it.
That's fair. Yeah.
Moving on to a really exciting game, I think that we're all in store for, and that is the Baltimore Ravens versus the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's going to be a really fun game.
Ravens are going to win.
It's going to be a fun game.
Ravens going to win.
From the Ravens side, you're starting Lamar, you're starting Andrews, you're starting Derrick Henry, you're starting Tucker. Your Dallas side, CD, Dak. Aubrey is the number 1 kicker, I think, right now, and he is just absolutely killing it in fantasy. The flex side, you are going to flex Zay Flowers, and I think there's an opportunity to flex Isaiah Likely, and you could have Andrews and Likely. We talked about that last week. Dallas, I don't really want to have anyone else besides CD and Dak, to be honest. Depending on if Ferguson comes back and is healthy, I'd put Ferguson right back in. But I think this is going to be a very defense-heavy game. So I'm interested to see if you would start either of these defenses.
I actually think that if Ferguson comes back, I'm not starting either tight end. I wouldn't want to, at least. But if he doesn't come back, Schoonmaker looked really good for Dallas. I got to say, he did look really good for Dallas. But outside of that, I think the defenses are going to be rough here. Absolutely.
It's going to be an interesting game. I I don't know, man. It's going to be really tough. Both have really good defenses. It could, like you said, Ty, it could be a very low scoring game.
Yep.
It's tough.
So
Man.
moving on. Next game, guys.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kansas City versus Atlanta. This is going to be a blowout, in my opinion, here. So you're going to have Kansas City side of the ball. I'm going to say everybody again. Actually, no, I take that back. There are a couple people I have reservations on, but you're going to start Pat Mahomes. You're going to start Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, the Kansas City defense for sure, and Butker as the kicker. I mean, your top guy at every position, you're starting them for sure. Guys, I do have a reservation about Xavier Worthy. Yes, he blew up. I understand he blew up on that week 1. He only had 3 or 4 touches, and he had the same exact thing last game. I don't know if I like it. I want to see more out of him. Carson Steele is the big hot pickup. P. Ryan, Hunt, all the running backs. I'm not playing them. Just wait and see. On the Atlanta side of the ball. Sorry, guys.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Bijan, Drake London, you have to start because you drafted him there. This is pretty much his last game. I think at this point, if he duds on week 3, you're not dropping him. You're trying to get rid of him though, and you're benching him for sure.
Who, London?
And Younghoe Koo, the kicker.
London, yeah.
What did you say last week was a dud?
6 receptions that were all short yardage and a lucky touchdown at the end in garbage time? I'm gonna say yeah.
Yep.
14.4 points. I mean,
yeah, but his first week he had 5 yards per target. Second against Philly, he had 7.71 yards per target. Touchdown is the only reason that he was relevant.
Exactly. He didn't even have 10 yards of catch last game.
Counts.
And it counts, but you're not going to rely on that. You're not going to rely on that against Kansas City's defense.
That's fair. This might be a bad week for him.
Yep. Jordan, take us to the next matchup.
So we have Jacksonville versus Buffalo.
Before you move on, there's a doubleheader on Monday. It's Jaguars Buffalo at 7:15, 7:20, 7:30, and then you've got the next game, which I'll cover in a bit, is Commanders and Cincinnati at 8:20. So we get a doubleheader on Monday.
I hate how they offset them though.
I know
why.
I like that they do that, but
really?
Yeah, I do. Makes it easier. Then yeah, because I mean, if you want to watch it for football purposes, you get to watch it for football purposes. Now, if it's fantasy reasons, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Red zone to have everything at once. But Jacksonville side, really, probably not starting anyone besides Etienne. I'm not comfortable starting Trevor Lawrence. I might consider starting Brian Thomas Jr. I'm not starting Christian Kirk. Buffalo is, I think, 3rd. Lowest points given to wide receivers so far this season. I don't think that's changing. The Jaguars have not been playing well as is, and now they're going up against a top unit. Then for Buffalo side of things, you're still playing Josh Allen, fantasy quarterback king. James Cook had awesome week 2. You're playing him. And Dalton Kincaid, we still are expecting big things from him. You might even be starting Khalil Shakir.
Yeah. I think you summed it up real good with that. Yeah, we're all disappointed in the Jaguars.
Disappointed in the Jaguars, and I'd play as many people from Buffalo who are players as possible.
But I think Brian Thomas Jr. will be the number 1 receiver there by the end of the season.
I think he already is.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Moving on to the second Monday Night Football game, we have the Washington Commanders versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Washington side, I think you can start Jaden Daniels unless you have a better quarterback on your bench. Brian Robinson Jr., he's a start. I think he's absolutely blowing up. He's number 12. He's the 12th running back right now in rankings. You're going to start him. From the Cincinnati side, you're going to start Burrow. You're actually going to start pretty much all of the Bengals just because this Washington defense is Swiss cheese. So you're going to go Burrow, Chase, Zach Moss. You're going to play their defense because let's see if Commanders are going to get there. And from the flex side, I think actually Austin Eckler is proving to be a start. He is slightly behind Brian Robinson Jr., but he's really exploding in the receiving game. So I think he's a confident start now or flex in my eyes. And then I think you're going to start questioning whether or not you start Terry McLaurin. This is a big one. and I think I would lean towards not.
I'm getting to there too. He's firmly in my flex category, and I'd say he's probably around my wide receiver 30. He's that question mark. He's on the cliff.
Yep.
He has not done what I hoped he would. We also haven't seen Jaden Daniels throw it like I thought we might.
That's exactly it.
We'll see.
Jaden Daniels not
Only
throwing
week
it
two.
as well as I expected him to do it. I mean, it actually surprised me looking at Daniels right now. He has 226 passing yards last game alone.
Right.
So I'm actually surprised at that, and not a lot is going to McLaurin.
It's not. I mean, Jaden Daniels is obviously adjusting to the NFL. He was a great passer at LSU. I don't think it's time to label Terry McLaurin as a bust for where you picked him at his ADP yet. But if this continues by week 8, yeah, I'm pretty bummed I picked him.
Yeah. Yep. I just want to have one more last point about this game. T. Higgins has been projected to be playing. If he does play, do not start him. He is not ready yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't start him either. I think that actually just helps Chase.
I actually think so. This is going to be my upset game of the week. I think the Commanders are going to win this matchup, and Cincinnati is going to start off this season 0-3.
I love the projection. I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, that was our week 3 matchup, and now we're going to go into our Duel of the Fools. Jordan, why don't you go over real quick last week's results?
So last week, Mike and Tyler tied for first with 5 right. I got 3 right. And if you look at the matchups, we had Aaron Rodgers versus Stafford. Rodgers won. Najee Harris versus DeAndre Swift. Najee won. Alvin Kamara versus Aaron Jones. I mean, Kamara cooked. We all know it. He won.
I think Kamara got twice the points.
Seriously. Ramondre Stevenson versus James Cook. James Cook won that one. Drake London versus George Pickens. We had Drake London. And Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Brian Thomas Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. finally clicked, as we all know, with Kyler in Arizona. CeeDee Lamb versus Jamar Chase. CeeDee Lamb took that matchup. And last, we had Noah Fant going up against Colby Parkinson. And Noah Fant got that one. Tyler was the only one who got that one right. I thought it was going to be Colby, especially with all the injuries and Stafford having to throw to somebody. But we're moving on. Week 3, where I'm hoping to make a comeback. First matchup, we have QBs, Jared Goff going up against Arizona, and Brock Purdy versus LA Rams. Mike, who do you get?
I'm thinking Purdy. I think Purdy's going to end up lighting up this really weakened Rams team. So that's my pick.
And I had to go Goff because he's a Lion, and I can't root against the Lions.
I forgot about that rule. I'm going to totally throw more Lions in here.
Yeah. Nope. Can't do it.
Wow. I mean, I went with Jared Goff. I just think that Brock Purdy, it's not that he's been playing poorly. He just hasn't thrown a lot of touchdowns this season. And with a banged-up supporting cast, no CMC, no Debo, I think that they're going to run it through Jordan Mason and try to be efficient. I went with Jared Goff. Next matchup, we have Zach Charbonnet going up against Miami, who's in shambles, versus Zamir White going up against Carolina. Tyler, who do you have?
So this is going to be interesting for me because I feel like I'm going to end up biting myself in the butt because if Walker starts, there's no way Zach Charbonnet is going to be the winner. But I did pick Zach Charbonnet. I think he's going to do better against the Dolphins, and Zamir White has been a huge disappointment this season. That's
exactly how I picked. Mike?
I am sticking with Zamir White for all the reasons I said before. I think if there's going to be ever a game that he does well, it's going to be against the Carolina Panthers. I think their defense is awful, and I think he's going to cook for at least one game.
Next matchup in the running backs, we have Jonathan Taylor versus Chicago and David Montgomery versus Arizona. Personally, I went with Jonathan Taylor. This was tough because I like Monty a lot. But Tyler, we know you went with David Montgomery because you don't go against Lions.
Had to.
Well, Mike, where you at?
I got to say, I'm choosing to not change my pick and stick with Jonathan Taylor.
I know.
It's not so much Jonathan Taylor, it's the Chicago Bears. The only reason I actually think he might win is because in a PPR format, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to get so many dump offs that he's going to end up, he's just going to PPR his way to be irrelevant. But
Yeah.
Chicago's going to be a bear. They're going to be so good.
Next matchup, we have running back matchup number 3, Zach Moss going up against Washington, and then DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears going up against Indianapolis. Tyler, who do you have in this matchup?
It looks like we've all got Zach Moss on just this matchup. It's so juicy. Swift has been disappointing, and all the Bears have been disappointing. And this is a real juicy matchup going up against the Commanders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike? Yeah.
We all have the same. Yeah, we all have the same. So we're all going with Zach Moss.
Wide receiver
move on to
match
the next one.
Number 1. We got Devonta Smith of the Eagles going up against New Orleans, and then we have Garrett Wilson of the Jets going up against New England. Looks like we may all have the same on this one too. Devonta Smith.
AJ Brown's out. Devonta Smith is the only target. The only thing I'm worried about is the Saints defense, which shut down the opposing teams the last 2 weeks. But
yeah, I'm actually going to switch this one. I am going to switch this one.
No, you can't switch it. We're locked in, Mike.
Let him lose.
No.
Okay, we're locked in.
Oh my gosh,
Mike, you can switch.
No, take us to the next matchup, and it's because it's locked in.
I switched for you, Mike.
Nope.
Okay, I'm okay with it.
I switched for him. You can switch before
No, you cannot.
That's the last moment. This is the gate. The gate is closing. The door was
not shut.
This is the
gate. It's when we're done recording. I'm with him. So I'm actually going to switch. I think Garrett Wilson is going to get
record that Mike is going to be wrong. So
honestly, yeah. I don't know. I don't like this as much as I thought I would immediately, but I'll switch. I'll trust with Garrett Wilson.
Gate is now closed, but this is a defense that held Jamar Chase to 7 points. Next wide receiver 2 matchup, we have George Pickens versus LA Chargers.
I so hope he just happens to get 20 catches.
Wow. Maybe. You never know. And then Drake London going up against Detroit. Tyler?
I had to pick George Pickens. I also don't think Drake London is going to do very well against Detroit.
This was not a pick for George Pickens as it was for me against Drake London, so I'm going George Pickens.
I went Drake London. I'm hoping last week is a sign of things to come in terms of how many points he's going to be getting. Kirk Cousins seems to be playing a little bit better in Raheem Morris' system. And I just think, George Pickens, we'll see what he can do against Chargers.
Drake London is going up against Kansas City.
I must have changed the name. I did change the name. I never changed the team. It's fine.
But I still think George Pickens.
But I still that's an even better defense, so that's fine. My logic still stands.
All right, I'm changing George Pickens. So, wide receiver, and I have more reason than Mike to switch. So wide receiver matchup 3: Devontae Adams versus Carolina, or Nico Collins versus Minnesota.
Oh, definitely Devontae Adams. He had a kill. Gardner Minshew's finally realizing you throw Adams the ball and you win. He had 12 targets last game against the Baltimore Ravens, and this is a Carolina defense. I actually can't believe you guys went with Nico Collins.
No, I went with Nico Collins because Nico Collins has been targeted all the time anyway on a pass-heavy offense. They're potentially losing their running back, and not to mention, you don't think that they're going to just get a lead and just kill time with Zamir White? Absolutely.
Yeah, dude,
I don't think they're going to throw the ball that much.
Have one catch for 70 yards. Zamir White's going to run it in. And then Devontae's never going to see the ball again the rest of the game.
All right.
That's my theory.
Honestly, I'm with you, Jordan.
I think Devontae is involved in the first half. I wouldn't be surprised.
And then the game's over.
Yeah, I'm not surprised if Devontae does not see a target the second half of the game.
All right, take us home.
Tight end matchup of the week. Travis Kelce going up against Atlanta, or Mark Andrews going up against Dallas. Tyler?
Gotta go with Kelce. I'd like the matchup better.
I like Mark Andrews. I don't know why. I just do.
I got a good feeling.
It's honestly out of blind hope.
Here's my theory. It's that the Baltimore's going into Dallas knowing that they're an 0-2 team, and this is a must-win game. Who is Lamar going to throw it to? Oh, reliable Mark Andrews.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm hoping for it too. But I think that concludes our Duel of the Fools for week 3.
And I just want to rub it in before we end. I am winning with 10 with a commanding lead. Mike has 7. Jordan, sorry, you have 6. And Mike, we are counting the tie as both of us won that week. So I've got 2 weeks won and Mike has one. Sorry, Jordan. We're hoping better for you next week. But anyway,
Are you?
Thanks for listening in.
I'm hoping terrible things for you. No.
I know. That was episode 33. Thanks for listening in. Give us a like, follow, and subscribe. And we will see you next week to go over week 4 matchups. Take care, fools, and have a good night. Or day, whatever you're listening.
Woo. Mike, you messaged.
Oh, did I? Okay.
We were at 56 minutes.
Jordan, you can see the time?
It's
done.
It doesn't. It says still recording.
Yeah, why isn't it stopped?
It does say still recording.
And no,
right.
Someone else pressed stop.
No.
Cam, speaker, share.
If you're
leave.
Still with
We're
having
leave?
technical difficulties. He essentially just hung up the phone.